The mountain where Moses met God has been in the wrong place for 1,500 years. Every map, every church, every Bible atlas, they all point to the same peak in the middle of the Sinai Peninsula, a site called St. Catherine's Monastery, where tourists visit and pilgrims climb, and the official Mount Sinai has stood unchallenged since the 4th century AD. It is one of the most visited religious sites in the world. It has been painted, photographed, and preached about for generations. There is just one problem. The Bible never said it was there. Open Google Earth and fly to the northwest corner of Saudi Arabia. Find a mountain called Jabal al-Lawz. Zoom in on its summit. The rock is black, not the gray-black of old volcanic stone aging naturally over time. Scorched black, burned and burned so thoroughly that the thermal alteration is still visible from space, thousands of years later. The local people who have lived near this mountain for centuries have always called it by the same name, the Mountain of Moses. They were likely right, and the rest of the world has been looking in the wrong place for 1,500 years. In the 4th century AD, a Roman empress named Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, traveled through the region and declared the site of Mount Sinai to be a particular peak in the middle of the Sinai Peninsula. Her word carried the weight of imperial authority. The church built a monastery at the base of it. Pilgrims began making the journey. Maps were drawn. The location hardened into official doctrine and stayed there, unchallenged, for century after century. Nobody went back to check the text, because if they had, they would have found something that does not fit. The book of Exodus traces the Israelites' journey out of Egypt in careful, specific stages. They travel first to the wilderness of Shur, then to a place called Mara, then to Elim, where the text specifically notes there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, then through the wilderness of Sin, and finally to Sinai. That is not a vague spiritual itinerary. It is a route with named stops, directional logic, and geographical landmarks. When you follow that route on a map, it does not end in the middle of the Sinai Peninsula. It ends in Arabia. The Apostle Paul makes this explicit in a way that is almost startling in its plainness. Writing to the Galatians around 50 AD, within living memory of people who would have known the geography, he states, without qualification, Sinai is a mountain in Arabia, not a metaphor, not a theological allegory, a geographical fact, stated as casually as if he were giving directions. He says it the way someone says something everyone already knows, because in his day they probably did. Somewhere between Paul's letter and Helena's decree, the location migrated. Convenience reshaped history, and the mountain the Bible actually described sat quietly in the Arabian desert, scorched and fenced and largely forgotten by the Western world, while tourists climbed the wrong peak and called it holy. Jabal al-Lawz rises roughly 8,000 feet above the desert floor in the Tabuk region of northwestern Saudi Arabia. It is significantly taller than the traditional Sinai site. Its summit is distinctly and unusually dark, what geologists describe as thermally altered rock, meaning it was exposed to extreme concentrated heat at some point in the past. Exodus 19 describes the scene when God descended on Mount Sinai in vivid terms. The whole mountain was covered in smoke because God came down in fire, and the mountain trembled violently. The people camped at the base were so terrified that Moses had to set up physical boundary markers to keep them from rushing toward it. Those boundary markers appear to still be there. Explorers and researchers who have visited Jabal al-Lawz, some with permission, many without, report finding large stone markers arranged in a wide perimeter around the base of the mountain, consistent with the boundary described in Exodus. Inside that perimeter, they found the remnants of an ancient altar. Exodus 24 records that Moses built an altar at the foot of Mount Sinai and erected 12 stone pillars, one for each tribe of Israel. At the base of Jabal al-Lawz, there are 12 stones, weathered, cracked, worn down by millennia of desert heat, but arranged in a pattern that does not occur naturally and does not happen by accident. Then there is the rock. Exodus 17 describes one of the most dramatic moments in the wilderness journey. Moses strikes a rock at a place called Horeb, a name the Bible uses interchangeably with Sinai, and water pours out of it in quantities large enough to sustain a population of people dying of thirst in the desert. Near Jabal al-Lawz, researchers have documented a massive split boulder, roughly 20 feet tall, sitting on a raised natural platform. Beneath it, carved into the ground, are erosion channels, the kind left behind when large volumes of water flow repeatedly over stone. This is a desert. It does not rain. Those channels were not made by weather. Something made water flow from that rock. The land still shows where it went. Here is the detail that stops most people cold. Jabal al-Lawz sits inside a restricted Saudi military zone. There is a fence, there are guards. Researchers who have attempted to access the site without official authorization have been arrested, had their cameras and film confiscated, and been expelled from the country. Several documented cases of this exist, going back decades. Saudi Arabia does not typically treat its archaeological sites this way. The country has thousands of ancient ruins, Nabatean cities, pre-Islamic inscriptions, Bronze Age settlements, most of which are open to researchers and increasingly to tourists. The government has invested heavily in promoting its ancient heritage as part of a broader tourism strategy. Sites are catalogued, studied, and publicized. But this mountain is fenced. That asymmetry is hard to explain away. A remote desert peak that matches the biblical description of Mount Sinai more precisely than any other site on Earth. The scorched summit, the boundary stones, the split rock with water channels, the wide plain at its base large enough to hold an enormous encampment, is the one site that is inaccessible, guarded, and off-limits to independent investigation. The traditional location at St. Catherine's Monastery was chosen by a Roman empress who needed a holy site that was close to Egypt, reachable by Roman roads, and accessible to the pilgrims she wanted to attract. Convenience shaped that decision. Political and religious authority locked it in place. The actual geography of the Exodus account played almost no role. Moses did not climb a convenient mountain. He climbed one that left marks burned into stone, carved into rock, and written across the landscape in a language that satellite imagery can still read today. The mountain has not moved. It has not hidden. It has been sitting in northwestern Saudi Arabia, scorched and fenced and waiting, while the rest of the world looked somewhere else entirely. The real question was never where the mountain is. The real question is why it took a Google Earth screenshot to make people look again.